Dana White and Turki Alalshikh's so-called boxing league, the salaries have been revealed online. And I must say, I'm not surprised at all by the numbers that I'm seeing. Do you know what I mean? Like, I covered this, innit? I covered this when the news first broke, when Turki Alalshikh signed that deal with TKO and Dana White. I came on here and we spoke about it, do you know what I mean? Because listen, I've been following the UFC for like over 15 years. So I know how Dana White operates. Do you know what I mean? I know the type of guy he is. I know what a lot of his current fighters say about him and former fighters. Do you know what I mean? So Dana White is a tough operator. He rules with an iron fist. He's very much a company man. The UFC, the brand comes first before any fighter and their needs. Do you know what I mean? So when all these figures have been revealed online, like some of the numbers, I see people going crazy over it, saying, oh my God, like, how can you pay someone 20 grand, a fighter 20 grand for 10 rounds? Listen, Dana White is the only type of guy that will pull some shit like this. Do you know what I mean? That's why Turki Alalshikh went to Dana White. He signed his deal with Dana White. That's why he didn't sign it with Eddie Hearn or Frank Warren, which to my surprise, because he's been working with Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn for the last few years. They've helped to propel Turki Alalshikh's name into the boxing world. Do you know what I mean? No one knew Turki Alalshikh if it wasn't for Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn. Do you know what I mean? So I was a bit surprised when he didn't sign that deal with them. He went with Dana White because the style of a boxing league that he's trying to implement is exactly what Dana White, TKO, whoever else is behind it, that's exactly what they want to implement. They want to implement the UFC model into the boxing world. Do you know what I mean? But the only thing I'm going to say is, like, I don't really want to delve too much into the nitty-gritty details about the revelations on salary, fighters, contracts and that. But I'm just going to give you a quick opinion of mine on what I think of the whole thing. And is that the UFC, yeah, what happens in the UFC, yeah? This is just me. This is just my opinion. With the UFC as the brand is bigger than any fighter that they currently have. You know, obviously sometimes, at some moments, you do have exceptions like Conor McGregor, who just transcended. Do you know what I mean? Like, he was able to cross over and just become a global superstar. Yeah, so there are exceptions to the rules once in a while. But 99% of the time, the UFC is bigger than the fighter, the brand. Do you know what I mean? And when the UFC was established back, you know, mate, crazy years ago, mate. Do you know what I mean? Many, many moons ago, yeah? They were able to build a monopoly within MMA. Do you know what I mean? Like, where they became like an institution. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, the UFC in MMA is like a student going to Cambridge University or Harvard University, Oxford University. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like a privilege. So a lot of the fighters that go to the UFC, they're just happy to be part of the UFC because of the whole branding, the marketing, the glamour that comes with it, the whole package. It glitters like gold. Do you know what I mean? Like, you just want to be there. So a lot of the time, fighters don't really worry too much about their contracts or their salaries until they reach the top. Do you know what I mean? Until they start climbing up the rankings and they reach the top, now they start getting a little bit of a buzz. They start getting a bit of that taste of success and they want more money. That's when they run into problems because they were so hyped up, so happy that they're joining the UFC. A lot of the times they didn't even bother reading the contract properly. And I've seen it where Dana White will be telling the fight, yo, you signed that contract, like, yo, that's what you're getting paid. And fighters are like, yo, I want to renegotiate my contract, I want more money. And Dana White will say to them, yo, you got 3 more fights. We'll negotiate when you go a fight left or 2. We'll see about it. Do you know what I mean? So the UFC, the brand itself is actually like bigger than MMA, the sport of MMA. Because when people talk about MMA, yeah, a lot of people say I watch UFC. Why a lot of people actually mean, yeah, I watch MMA? Because there's other organizations, there's other MMA promotions out there like Bellator, One Championship. Do you know what I mean? There's other ones as well, but none of them are anyway at the level of the UFC. So for the casuals, UFC is basically MMA. That's what they mean. Do you know what I mean? That's how big Dana White has been able over the years to transform the UFC. That the slogan for MMA is basically UFC. Do you know what I mean? So he's been able to get away with murder, with salaries and stuff like that. But he has been challenged by a few fighters. Francis Ngannou, the most recent one, he wanted more money. They wouldn't give him. Francis Ngannou had to come to boxing and box against Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua to make the most money that he's ever made in his whole career. I mean, when Francis Ngannou fought Cyril Gane defending his title, I think he got like 300K as the champion. Do you know what I mean? But obviously, you can also make money from like pay-per-view points, etc., etc. Do you know what I mean? So Dana White and the UFC, they can pretty much dictate the price of whatever they're doing within the UFC. The only problem is with boxing is a whole sport. UFC is a promotion, is a brand within the sport of MMA. But they're so big that people forget about MMA, they just call it UFC. Boxing is a sport, it's massive. There's promoters and promotion companies within boxing, Queensberry, Golden Boy, do you know what I mean? Matchroom, etc., etc. Boxer, there's a lot of them. Do you know what I mean? But those promotions and promoters in boxing, they're not bigger than the sport itself. Boxing is bigger than them. Do you know what I mean? So a lot of the time, the promoters can't always dictate the price. They can't dictate contracts. Do you know what I mean? They can't tell fighters, yo, 20 grand is 20 grand. They can't really do that when the levels go higher. When you're talking about the superstars, when you're talking about Anthony Joshua, Canelo, Alexander Usyk, Tyson Fury. Do you know what I mean? Tank Davis, Ryan Garcia. These superstars, you're not really dictating to them because they command a lot because they have the support, they have the fans. And boxing is an open market. Do you know what I mean? These men are trading in an open market. The UFC is a closed door, mate. Do you know what I mean? There's no one in there. There's no bidders. There's no people bidding for purses in the UFC. So that's why Dana White has been able to implement that Draculian, that Iron Fist style in the UFC. But looking at these revelations about the salaries, the only problem that I see them coming into is that in order for this type of payment salaries structure for it to work and for the league to be successful, you have to eliminate the competition. You have to eliminate the likes of Matchroom, Queensberry Promotion, Golden Boy and stuff like that. You have to do that. And I'm sorry, they're not going to be able to do that. Because if you're a fighter, if you got an option, let's say you're a kid fresh off the streets and you're getting options, you look at the contracts from the boxing league of Dana White, Turki Alalshikh, and then you got the likes of Matchroom and that. You get way more freedom of movement and salary negotiation, sponsorship deals with Frank Warren, Eddie Hearn than you will do with UFC. And also that includes your image. Sorry, not the UFC, the boxing league. Do you know what I mean? The contracts are a bit more tight in the boxing league than it would be with just a single promoter like a Eddie Hearn or a Frank Warren. So for me, if I was a young kid, I was a prospect, I'm going with a traditional boxing promoters rather than joining the boxing league with Dana White and Turki Alalshikh. Do you know what I mean? So this league of Turki Alalshikh, Dana White, is basically, it's not aimed at the superstar. It's not aimed at the Canelos. It's not aimed at Joshua. It's aimed at the guy coming off the street. Prospects. It's like the contender. If you watch the UFC, they've got the UFC, the contender series. It's kind of like that. They want to get young blood. Do you know what I mean? Like build them up. Do you know what I mean? And turn them into superstars. Do you know what I mean? Because you can control those type of fighters that are not established here. You can kind of like pay them whatever you want to pay them until they're established. But the only problem is because you're competing against boxing as well in general, the rest of boxing, the open market with other promoters, when those fighters eventually do move up the ranks in that boxing league and they become superstars, they're going to demand more money, right? And when you don't want to cough up that money because you kind of have a ceiling and you're not going past that, Guess what those same superstars that you helped build, guess what they're going to do? They're going to go to the likes of Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren. Because Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren will be snapping at their heels to get those contracts signed. Because they'll be like, yo, listen, UFC is giving you 800 grand for a championship fight? Are you crazy? For you to defend the belt and you're the champion, you get 800 grand. Obviously, you get some pay-per-view points. So that might push it to like $1 million or 1.5. But then Eddie Hearn, you tell, yo, come over here. I'll pay you 10 million for a championship fight. Do you know what I mean? So that's the kind of like the problems that Turki Alalshikh and Dana White, they're going to have to overcome. And it's going to be one of those things where it's going to take years to implement, years of building. They're basically going to have to do with this boxing league what they've done with the UFC. We don't know what this boxing league is going to be called, but they're going to have to basically transform that boxing league, yeah? Make it so big, brand it in a crazy way that it becomes a privilege to join that boxing league. They're going to have to make the likes of Eddie Hearn, Frank Warren look weak. Make them look like shit, crap. They're not good. Do you know what I mean? Make them look like, you don't want to join them. You want to be part of this boxing league because this is where it's at. The branding, the marketing, everything. This is where it's at. If they can't do that, if they can't do what they did with the UFC in MMA, if they can't do that with this boxing league in boxing, it's going to be very tough, man, because the competition is stiff, mate. Eddie Hearn, Frank Warren, all these guys are going to up their game as well. They're not just going to lay down and, you know what I mean, and just let Turki Alalshikh and Dana White take him out. The competition is going to become stiff. They're going to up their game too. So the salaries that these guys have revealed, like 20 grand for a 10-round fight, 125,000 for a fighter ranked at the company number 3 to number 4. Do you know what I mean? 375,000 when challenging for a company championship, challenging for a belt, 300. I mean, listen, these are decent numbers, innit? But if you compare it to boxing, even you go 20 years ago, Mike Tyson, all these more, that guys were getting paid 15, 20 million back then. Sugar Ray Leonard, them guys were getting 10, 15 million. So in boxing, fighters are used to getting those big paydays. You're not just going to come in and try and change it. Do you know what I mean? So Turki Alalshikh, Dana White, they've got their work cut out. They've got a lot to do to convince fighters to really sign up for their boxing league. Listen, there'll be fighters that sign up for it. There's always someone willing to do something for a bit of cash. There'll be fighters definitely signing up for it, but they're not going to attract the best talents. I'm sorry. It's going to be very hard for them to attract the best talents unless they change some of those terms and conditions in the contracts. Do you know what I mean? I don't really want to delve too much into the contract, like look proper into it. I just wanted to give you my opinion of what I think of the league and whether it's going to be successful or not, comparing it to boxing and all that, comparing it to the UFC. Do you know what I mean? So it's going to be very difficult and a challenge for these guys to overcome, like, the competition, which is boxing. And also, Turki Alalshikh, he's open to working with the likes of Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn and that. So if Turki Alalshikh, there's going to be some type of conflict of interest and contradictions. Because if Turki Alalshikh, for example, is working with Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn, and he's paying their champion 50, 80 million for an undisputed fight in boxing, WBA titles and all that. He's paying them 80 million. But then again, you've got a champion in the boxing league for a championship fight for him to defend his belt. He's getting 750K. I mean, your champion is going to turn around and look and take Alalshikh and Dana White like, what the hell is that about? Do you know what I mean? But it does say that some of these fighters can fight in real season cards and get 90%. Etc., etc. That's all good, but it will be 90% of what? Because again, Turki Alalshikh and Dana White will be able to control the salaries of these fighters. So it's 90% of what? Maybe they might guarantee them, you know, I don't know, 5 million or something like that. Do you know what I mean? But then if you compare it to a fighter that's with Eddie Hearn and they're free, they can earn way more money than that, like 100 million, 200 million, like Canelo. Do you know what I mean? So this boxing league, like I said, is more aimed at prospects, building them up, trying to turn them into superstars. You know what I mean? But like I said, when these fighters eventually become superstars, if they do ever become superstars, because it's not guaranteed, they're not guaranteed to get the best crop, the best talent going to them. A lot of boxers might still prefer the traditional route into boxing with the traditional promoters. Do you know what I mean? So this league is all about the prospects, getting some fighters from Africa, Asia, whatever, building them up and paying them these little salaries. That is the only way they're going to be able to build it up. And it's going to take years. It's not something that's going to take 2 or 3 years. It might even take a lifetime. Turki Alalshikh, Dana White, they might not even be here to see the full fruition, to see the final result. You know what I mean? To see the final success of this league. They might not even be around. You know what I mean? But for me, I still hold the same opinion that Turki Alalshikh, if you wanted to do something like this, he already had the people that know how to do it properly. Do you know what I mean? He had Eddie Hearn, Frank Warren. He could have just done a little structure with them guys. Do you know what I mean? I still feel he would be successful. But him going against them and the boxing establishment to link up with Dana White and the type of salaries that they're offering, like some of the revelation we've just seen, good luck, mate. I don't know. Listen, I wish them the best. I'm a very optimistic guy. Like, do you know what I mean? I'm not too negative. I'll look forward to seeing the next coming weeks. There might be more developments, more things to be revealed. So listen, I'll be open-minded about it. Do you know what I mean? And I'll keep an eye on it. But for me, as of right now, I have a lot of reservations for this boxing league, and I'm not too sure like how it's really gonna work, how it's gonna be a success going on in the future. Do you know what I mean? But let's wait and see. You never know, man. Turki Alalshikh, Dana White, these are smart guys, man. So they might just come up with something else. You know what I mean? Let's wait and see. Let's see how it goes. But listen, let me know what you think of the boxing league by Dana White and Turki Alalshikh and their salaries. 20 grand for a 10-round fight. Are you mad? Do you agree with that? Let me know in the comments. I'll really appreciate it. Once again, thank you so much for watching EMGM Sports. I'm your boy Enzo. Please don't forget to smash the like button. And if you're new to the channel, go ahead and subscribe, because that's the only way you're going to help us to grow. I'll be back real soon with another one. Until then, stay blessed. Peace.